Welcome back to Academy Live. Like I said, there's nothing better than live, glitches and all. Bessie's on vacation today, but we're going to have a great show today. We might even joke that today would be the best show ever. Anyway, we have special guests here. We're going to be talking about Microsoft Azure, and we have Chris Kirby and Elliot Chandler of PAX 8 to walk us through getting started with Microsoft Azure. Through this episode, viewers will walk away with an understanding of Azure's ecosystem and an understanding of how Azure can boost your business. First up, Rex is going to tell us about a webinar he has coming up. So Rex, tell us about that.
Oh man, I'm excited. July 16th at 1 o'clock to 1:45 Eastern time. That's weird. Eastern time, 1 to 1:45. David Shaffrin and I are going to do a webinar titled Hope is Not a Strategy, How to Maximize Your Company's Value. And basically what this is about is at some point, everybody starts thinking about what's the valuation of my company and how could I achieve maximum valuation if I were to ever sell it. And the good news is it pretty much lines up with the best practices of how you should always be running your company. But we're going to be talking about a 3-year plan to really focus on maximizing that valuation. So I'll go ahead and drop a link in the chat, and you can also find it in the show description. Hope to see everyone there.
Excellent. That's a great topic. And I'm really excited that you guys are putting this out. And I've seen you and David present, and you both have excellent presentations, great knowledge and experience. So it'll be a very high value event. So really excited about that. But let's bring on Chris Kirby. I'd love to bring on our first guest. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here. So my name is Chris Kirby, and I have been in the IT space for over 25 years, or like my kids like to say, since the 1900s. I have owned my own business for over 15 years, and after that, I was in the consulting space for a little over 5 years. And now I am with PAX 8. I work with our academy team and also with our professional services team. So the reason why I'm here today, I want to talk to you guys about some Azure courses that we have available right now. I actually grabbed a handful of slides from some of my classes. If we could bring those slides up, please. All right, so our very first Azure class is the Azure 101, and this is basically an introduction into Azure. Next slide, please. We start off with going over the shared responsibility model. And what this is, if you're not familiar with the cloud, anytime we move to the cloud, our responsibilities change. Microsoft picks up some responsibilities, and some of those responsibilities we share with them. So it's a very fundamental concept that is very important to understand. And so we go over that in detail. And then we also talk about some of the core products that Microsoft has to offer in Azure. And we break those up into 4 main categories: compute, networking, storage, and databases. And so we give an introduction to things like virtual machines, app services, VPNs, network security groups, Azure Files, blob storage. And we even go into the different ways that we can do Microsoft SQL with SQL, Azure SQL, SQL Managed Instance, and SQL on virtual machines. So then we get into our Azure 102 course. And with 102, we kind of expand on the things that we learned in 101. We take a deeper dive into some of those core products, and we talk about how we can use those building blocks to build out solutions inside of Azure. And then we also talk about best practices associated with building out those environments. And so an example slide I have when we talk about network security groups, this kind of gives you an example of the level of detail that we go into on different core services inside of Azure. In the 102, we also get into some networking concepts. We talk about different load balancers, both on the regional level and on a global level. This is an example slide of how we break down how traffic managers work and how we can use that in a DR environment. Lastly, our segue into the 103 class is going over Azure Migrate. With Azure Migrate, that session, we talk about how we can bring our workloads from on-premises or from other clouds into Microsoft Azure. So the last session of 102, it's all about Azure Migrate, and that is our segue into 103. And so you can kind of see now that these classes, they kind of build off of each other from the 101 to the 102 and the 103. When we get to the 103, it's mainly about, okay, now we have our environment inside of Azure. How do we monitor it? How do we get alerts? How do we control things? And we call that governance. So the 103 class is all about governance. And luckily, Microsoft has what they outline as the cloud governance framework. And we go over the 5 main disciplines of cloud governance. So we talk about cost. We talk about security in the cloud. We talk about how we can maintain consistency with our resources. And we talk about identities and how we can deploy and have accelerated deployments for resources when we're building out environments in Azure. A big part of the 103 is about cost, not just how we can save money in Azure, but also how we can control costs, how we can put policies in place to eliminate erroneous or spending that we may not intend to do. So a big part of the 103 is going over setting up budgets, creating budget alerts so that we can be proactive about our spending in Azure instead of reactive. The last thing I want is somebody to move to the cloud and then have to move back because they weren't educated on ways to control costs and to save money. So these were just a handful of slides from the different sessions. We also have a topic of Azure Monitor. We go over the different components of Azure Monitor and how we can make it a complete monitoring solution for all of our Azure environments. So now this is a slide that tells you all of the class content that we have for the 101, the 102, and the 103. So you can see those slides are just kind of a very small sample of what we have to offer. And actually, I have a 101 class starting this Thursday, July 11th, and it is not too late to sign up. We will have a link in the description below. If this is something that your company is interested in, please sign up. I will be your instructor for this go around. And I very much encourage you to attend the 101, the 102, and the 103. So thank you for letting me talk about our Azure Academy courses today.
And I really would encourage you. Chris Kirby is an amazing teacher. He's got a wealth of knowledge. He's such a great instructor. I love seeing the feedback that we get. And also just kind of want to put out there that, you know, one of the best ways to take advantage of these and to take all of these classes in session is through our ILC instructor-led course subscription model that we have. So, you know, there's a ton of value in that, as, you know, our goal really is around education, enablement, and engagement with partners. So I'd really encourage you to look in that and look in the Azure 101, 102, 103 courses that Chris Kirby's teaching. But Chris, I want to pull back just a minute again, real quick. What makes you an expert here? Tell us a little bit about you and your experience and your role at Pax8. I want to uncover that a little bit and then talk a little bit more about some of the courses.
Yeah, so you know, I do teach Azure classes in our academy, but I also work alongside with our professional services team. And if you're not aware, with our professional services team, we have a team of engineers that can assist you as partners at your MSP with migrations. If you have clients that are wanting to migrate to the cloud, with Azure Virtual Desktop, and a lot of different things that we have to offer. If this is something that is interesting to you, I would recommend to reach out with your ISC at Pax8, and we can get in touch with designing a solution or a migration plan, and our professional services team can assist you with those migrations.
So, Chris Kirby, I just wanted to double down on that. Like, our Proserve organization is doing, you know, I don't know, few hundred projects a year, Azure migration projects, and you're involved in working with those. So you're, you know, they always say those who can do, those who can't teach, right? But you're one of those rare individuals that loves the doing and loves the teaching, and that's why you're working with Academy. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, teaching is a passion of mine, and you know, Azure can be an intimidating space when you first get into it, and so that's something that I really emphasize in the 101 is once you start breaking it down and you learn one concept at a time, it becomes less overwhelming at the end. But yes, I work with our professional services team, and we do a lot of different things. Azure is a very big ecosystem for IT services. So there's always things to learn. Things are always changing. Things are getting renamed. And so it definitely keeps you on your toes.
So I
I
want to
think
hit that. Like you said, it, it is a Azure's huge. It's it's a whole ecosystem. And I think that's one thing about that I really like about this course. I remember, kind of from the ground up as we talked about this, responding to partner needs. How do I get in? What's a practical way to look at this and get involved? But talk a little bit about why is this important for our partners to think about? What's the value or the opportunity around kind of building and getting familiarity with Azure and having that in your portfolio?
Well, more and more companies today are moving to the cloud. We're going away from the capital expenditure model where, we buy a lot of hardware and we keep it on-prem and we depreciate it over, 5 years. And we move over into an OpEx model where now we just spend a monthly fee on our compute services. And that's one of the nice things about Azure. For instance, if we put a file share in Azure, we no longer have to worry about our disk drives, failing on-prem, running out of support, running out of storage. The cloud is almost an infinite place for storage. And so we have a lot of options in the cloud that we may not have on-prem. Scalability, we can power off workloads in the cloud to save money. So it's really taking a shift. People are moving to the cloud. More and more clients are wanting to move their environments to the cloud. So it's very important for our partners to be able to assist them with that. And that's what our academy and professional services team is here for.
Yeah, Academy and Proserve together really are about partner enablement, right? So if you've got a partner that maybe doesn't have the skill to do an Azure migration, we can definitely help them do that. We can help them learn along the way. If it's just that they know how to do it, they just don't have bandwidth, they can leverage the Proserve organization. So definitely the enablement is the key word there. But when they're a new engineer or an engineer that they need to get a second engineer able to do these Azure migrations. Do you think that these instructor-led courses are a good way to help them get going?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get people attending the classes that have never even logged in to the Azure portal, and we get some people that have a handful of Azure certifications. And so, we really welcome any and all people that want to learn more about Azure if you're just getting started, or if you just need a refresher. Like I mentioned earlier, things change a lot in the Microsoft world. And so, maybe you just need a refresher. Maybe you dealt with Azure a couple of years ago and you want to get back up to speed. So our 101, our 102, and our 103 classes can help with a wide variety of different people with different skill sets.
What kind of questions do you usually get? Like, I'm assuming most people will kind of go through and these are very much in a progression or a sequence and they're kind of designed that way. But talk to us a little bit about common questions, common concerns. What comes up from partners during these sessions most frequently?
Identity is a big confusion point for people in Azure, dealing with Active Directory versus Azure Active Directory. Well, now it's intra and intra domain services. That seems to be a big confusion point for people. And so I made sure to include in our 101 and 102 a lot of slides that help break that down. And part of the classes too is we offer demos as well. Usually at the end of each session, I'll spend about half of that for a demo, a live demo, and I'll answer any questions that they have at the time. So our classes are really designed to be an open format. I allow questions at any time. Some people are shy and they'll just shoot me an email after class. And so, we welcome any and all questions. To me, I feel like that's one of the best ways to learn. But yeah, we get a variety of questions, and there is no stupid questions. We welcome any and all questions. That's the best way to learn.
I think that that's really important, and I think that's a real value is the kind of the interaction with the instructors, the subject matter experts. Um, one of the things, this kind of comes up a lot, and I've had a lot of conversation around this, but people will ask the question, will these courses help prepare for certification? People say, "Oh, I want to get my team certified in Microsoft and in Azure." And how would you respond to that when people kind of ask
Yeah.
about that?
That's a great question, and we actually get asked that a lot at the beginning of our classes. And while I didn't design these classes specifically to align with any Microsoft certifications, I will say with confidence that if you go through the 101, the 102, and the 103, the AZ 900 exam, which is an Azure Fundamentals course, um, should be able to be passed. We cover most everything and more that's on the AZ 900. And we also talk about things that you're going to see on the AZ 104, which is an Azure Administrators course. And a lot of things are going to cross over into the AZ 500, which is a security specific course. And so while these really aren't specifically targeted for a certain exam, it does cover many different types of certifications. And even the Azure Virtual Desktop Specialty certification, which is the AZ 140, that is something that we talk about. And we actually have an Azure Virtual Desktop class that's going to be launching this fall. We listen to feedback from different classes, and that was one thing that we kept getting was, we want more on Azure Virtual Desktop. And so, yes, we talk about AVD a little bit in the 101, the 102, and the 103, but we are working on right now an entire class that's going to launch this fall. So stay tuned for that. It's in the works as we speak.
Yeah, I'd just like to underline there are a lot of courses and classes you can sign up for from different vendors and take them to help you pass a test and get a certification. That's not what we wanted to do with these academy classes. We want to make sure that you're prepared to go support this stuff in the real world with what you're really going to see as the primary driver here. So just want to make sure that comes across loud and clear.
Yeah, and like you said, that topic. One of the things we found initially is that Azure. There's so much there, and so I love that we kind of broke out all this into the 101, 102, 103, and I love. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other things, kind of on your roadmap, even if they're not like in development, but some of the other things you're hearing or you would like to kind of build on this for the future?
Yeah, well, we're always improving. The 101, the 102, and the 103, I take feedback every session, and I'll incorporate that into our slides. If we don't have questions during a session, I will repeat questions that other classes have asked, because I feel like that's a great way to learn. But we mentioned the Azure Virtual Desktop class that's launching this fall. But we're open to suggestions too. If anybody takes these classes and they feel like that there's a gap there that we need to cover, we will definitely look at offering some more classes as needed. But the AVD is going to be a big one. I'm anticipating a good turnout for that. I think it's going to be a really good course because we're seeing a lot of people moving into Azure Virtual Desktop. And so this course, it's going to be starting at the beginning, and we're going to go to advanced topics in it. And so since the entire course is over AVD, we can cover a lot of different things regarding AVD. So I'm really excited about it. Like I said, it will launch this fall. So stay tuned for more info on that.
Cool. Now,
Um,
you,
I
you
I wanted to ask a
go ahead,
quick
Reg.
question about Azure consumption abuse. I know that about a year ago that was a big problem that was starting to affect PAX 8 partners, and we within Academy worked with the engineering team, PAX 8 engineering team, and put together a course on how to kind of configure your system in a more secure way to help prevent the Azure consumption abuse. Can you hit on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think what you're referring to is there was a while that accounts were getting compromised, and these bad guys were going in and building these GPU enabled virtual machines and just racking up thousands of dollars a day in consumption charges with Azure, and that was a big problem. So first and foremost, multi-factor authentication. We want to have MFA on everything, especially accounts that have any kind of admin rights inside of Azure. But on top of that, there's a few things that we can do to safeguard our environments from that. one of my slides, we talked about budget alerts. So, you don't want to get shocked with a bill at the end of the month with charges that you may or may not have made. And so with budget alerts, you can get notified when those spends happen. And then also we can do something called Azure policy. And with Azure policy, we can enforce that at the entire subscription. And we can even restrict certain types of virtual machines or other types of resources for being even created at all. And so by protecting your accounts with MFA, putting in some cost alerts, and using Azure policy, you can very much protect your Azure environment and get rid of that fraud.
Very cool. Great answer. And then I had probably two other questions. We're down to about a minute left here, but Action Pack licenses. Do you feel like most partners are aware that they have internal use rights when they have the Action Pack?
I haven't really spoken to a lot of people about Action Pack licenses. We do get a lot of people interested in like Visual Studio licensing and different Azure sponsorship subscriptions. But another thing people aren't really sure about is they may have hybrid use benefit licenses. So if they already have existing licensing on premises for a Microsoft Windows Server or for a SQL Server, you can bring those licenses into Azure and save a lot of money on your Azure environment. So that's something that your representatives at Pax8 can help you with a lot if you have questions about that, any kind of licensing questions. Absolutely.
And then one last question. If somebody wanted to engage with Proserve, how do they do that?
Yeah, so you can reach out to your CAM, and the way that works is you will have an ISC, an infrastructure solutions consultant, that will work with you to figure out your solution. And then after that, it will get sent to the Proserve team. We'll go through a discovery phase where we make sure that the solution is going to fit. We go through if you have any compliance requirements, and then after that, we schedule your kickoff with the scheduled engineers. And from there, the engineer takes it to the end.
It's just that easy. Chris Kirby, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today and all you've done for Academy. Really excited about your upcoming class. I know it's going to be good. So enjoy the rest of your day.
Great.
Now we're going to move over to Elliot Chandler and bring Elliot on. How you doing, Elliot?
I'm doing great. How you guys?
Excellent.
Doing good. Hey, why don't you let's kick us off with an introduction. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? We call it like a little humble brag. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I can do that. No problem. I've been on a couple of live shows before, but I think this is my first time with you guys. So yeah, Eliott Chandler. I'm the global director for Pax8's Azure go-to-market business. So kind of think of me as the guy that's responsible for helping our partners be successful in Azure in every single region across the globe that Pax8 has a presence. So a nice small job for me to go do there. Background has always been kind of cloud for me. I spent the 5 years before Pax8 at Microsoft. So I was a technology strategist for Microsoft, working with some of their largest partners and some of the other indirect providers as well, just like Pax8, across every single cloud solution area. So whilst Azure is still a vast array of services, it is a much smaller focus for me than everything Microsoft has to offer. So really looking forward to kind of like getting deep on the Azure stuff. So been here about 2 years now. Hopefully doing some good work and want to continue doing that.
Excellent. Yeah, we've seen you around other shows, so glad that you grace us with your presence here today. I'm
already seeing some call outs in chat about your sweet your office
backdrop.
Oh
no. There. Yeah. Oh, really? Okay, yeah. I mean, I managed to get a Pax8 hat up and on the wall ready for the show today, so it was good. I was actually in my much more boring office when we started, and then I had some technical issues, so I came down to the gaming cave instead. So that's why you've been blessed with this background.
Fantastic.
Well, Elliot, I want to start with kind of your perspective on why is this relevant for our partners? Why you should really consider either expanding or getting into Azure?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and it's kind of an important one too. I think we mentioned a little bit, and Chris Kirby did a great job of kind of some of the benefits to a customer for moving to Azure and why they focus there, and scalability, and how they move to cloud, and all that good stuff. But it kind of has to be worth it for the partner too, right? That's the whole reason we're in this business. So on the surface, it can be quite scary, and a lot of the times when I'm talking to partners, and we bring up Azure as a kind of product area, it's a little intimidating, right? We've had that word thrown around a couple of times already in the show today, and you're right, it is. So it kind of, we need to do a better job of making sure the partners understand that the juice is worth the squeeze, essentially, right? And one of the ways we do this at PAX 8 is with a concept called One Cloud. So you may have heard us talk about this before, but this is kind of how we approach Microsoft's technology suite as one cloud workload. So not thinking about it as kind of modern workplace, Azure, and Dynamics. And we want to make sure that we enable our partners to be able to transact Microsoft as one cloud solution area, which sounds super intimidating, right? But there's a couple of reasons we do this. One of the things we started looking at is customer churn, right? It's not a great thing when a customer decides to leave a partner. So we kind of did some digging around what that looks like. And we realized that 80% of end customers that churn from a partner are only purchasing Microsoft's Modern Workplace suite. So that's M365, Exchange Online, that whole suite of services. 80% of customer churn comes from customers just consuming that one workload. So we need to kind of do a better job of bringing extra workloads to those customers, because we know those customers stick around. So in terms of using Azure for the health of my existing business, it's great from that side of things, because when a customer consumes Modern Workplace, Azure, and Dynamics, the customers that consume those three make up 0.01% of customers that churn. So even before we get into Azure as a topic, it does great things for your existing business, right?
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
Big numbers.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, and I can kind of come and like spout the good story about Azure being a really good workload and driving great numbers, but what it does to the existing business is a huge reason why you should take on Azure as kind of a workload. And it speaks to the success of the partners that can do that. So back when I was at Microsoft, we looked at some of the numbers, and we realized that only 8% of Microsoft partners transacted all Microsoft workloads. Only 8%. But that 8% of partners were responsible for 60% of Microsoft's revenue. Huge, right? And their ability to kind
numbers.
of those two don't correlate, right? 8 and 60. So we realize that those 8% of partners are the most successful partners. So at PAX 8, we want to make sure that our partners are part of that 8% club. We want to see that grow. We want to make sure that when they're coming to PAX 8 for support on the Microsoft stack, they can transact for the cloud, use our pro services team for deployments on stuff that's quite difficult, use our academy team for upskilling. But we need to kind of make them realize that the juice is worth the squeeze. And if you can be part of that 8% and transact all three cloud workloads to your customers, we know you'll be more successful. And the same is true the other way around. So I've had Azure partners come to me and say, how can I sell more Azure? And my response to them is, we thought about selling Dynamics, because we know that when a customer consumes Dynamics, their Azure spend grows by about 20%. And that's not really an approach that many of our partners take to when they look at Microsoft as individual clouds, right? What does Modern Workplace look like? What does Azure look like? What are all of these different components? I think before we even really dig into just the Azure piece, that one cloud approach is probably by far one of the biggest reasons why partners should entertain growing an Azure business and look at it as a workload.
Yeah, it's not just growing an Azure business, right? It's starting an Azure practice within the business.
Yep.
And that's why we've built these 101, 102, 103 courses within Academy, and the Proserve organization doing the projects to help get things going. And we put on the Azure boot camps so that partners can get a little hands-on experience, right? They activate their action pack subscriptions and use some of those internal use rights and start using it. And we know if you start using it with an internal workload, you get comfortable with it, and then you want to expose it to your clients. So then you take some of these courses and you just slowly get better with it, leveraging Proserve. I don't think too many of our partners are really aware with that Bamboo Cloud acquisition that our Proserve organization has an entire BizApps Dynamics Cloud practice geared around enabling partners to get into the business and start leveraging that third cloud. Because, like you said, when they're using the modern cloud, the Azure cloud, and the Dynamics cloud in their client base, they get to be part of that 8%. But we want to make it 9, 10, 11, 12, 15%.
Right, exactly. That's if I could kind of have one wish for us to show up with Microsoft, it would be to make Pax8's partners the leading partner base where they can transact all of the Microsoft workloads. That would make me the happiest go-to-market lead that Pax8 has, because it's just one of those prerequisites to success. It sets you up so well to just grow. We know that when customers are consuming like Azure and Dynamics, their modern workplace licenses go from basic up into premium, up into enterprise. Even at SMB level, the enterprise level SKUs become a viable option because of the breadth of the stack that they've got. So it's just such a great indicator for the health of your existing business, and then it helps you grow that revenue as well.
And there's definitely nervousness, right, around bringing a new offering into, a partner bringing a new offering like Azure or Dynamics into their offering to their end customers. And that's what we're trying to do with Academy and Proserve, is try to make that a soft landing and help you get started.
Yeah. So on that note, Elliot, what are you seeing are common challenges? What are some of the initial barriers to entry that partners can overcome with a little help and encouragement?
Yeah, I'd say there's probably three. The first is understanding the opportunity, right? And we touched on that a little bit with OneCloud and how we can kind of really make it a successful indicator for our business to grow and start an Azure business, right? I think that's probably barrier number one is partners often don't know what they're missing. So setting the scene on that front is probably the first place to start. I'd say the second barrier that we see is a lot of the partners come to me and say, I don't want to have to go and add new customers. A new customer ad for a small MSP or even a medium MSP it's a difficult thing to ask, right? I don't want you to grow your business by doubling your customers, because then that becomes really hard to manage. So, and my customers aren't kicking my door down and asking for Azure. And I have a running joke with my manager. She's the host of Technically Unraveled, Kristen Fehrenbach, that nobody wakes up one day and wants to buy a slice of Azure. It's just not how the world works, right? No small, medium business has ever said, I'd love to buy some Azure, please. It hasn't happened. I've not seen it once. If it does, I will eat my words. But what that translates to as one of our partners is, I don't see much of an opportunity in Azure. Right. And I came armed for this question today because we have access to a data pool called Microsoft's Cloud Ascent data. You might hear it referred to as CLAS, CLAS. This is data that Microsoft collects on all of their customers around what are they consuming today, what is their likelihood or propensity to consume a next workload, and all of that good stuff too. Every single Microsoft partner has access to it. I believe we've got a course in the description on Academy that takes you through how to understand and how to access your Cloud Ascent data. But the 10-second summary of what it is they will analyze all of your customers using things like what licenses have they bought and consumed, what licenses have they bought and not consumed, are they accessing white papers on the internet, are they hiring, are they firing, all of these different flags that Microsoft will collect. And they'll tell you whether or not they're likely to consume a next solution. And then they'll categorize that as nurture, educate, or act now, or evaluate is kind of one of them as well. So I'm either lazy or efficient, depending on how you categorize me. I'll say efficient just because I'm on your show and I want to look good. I would just focus on Act Now, right? There is so much in that Act Now bucket that you can just focus there. And one of the things I wanted to kind of throw out there is, if we look at Pax8's data of our existing partner base and their existing customer base, so if we didn't sign a single new partner for the next 12 months and our partners didn't sign a single new customer, there is $715 million of Azure opportunity in our existing customer base. So when our partners turn around to me and say, I don't know, there's no opportunity there, there is. We just don't know where to look. So this Cloud Ascent data is brilliant to help us identify the opportunity, because customers aren't kicking your door down saying, I want Azure. They don't understand what Azure is. And it's not really the job of a small, medium business to understand what Azure is. That's what you as the technology provider need to kind of understand and solve problems with them for your customers. So I think that's probably the second blocker that we have, is understanding the opportunity is there. And that $715 million with our existing partners and existing customers is not small. We can go and chase that and be very, very successful without having to think about how do I add new customers. So I think by far and away, that's definitely my number 2 on that one. I do have a third, but I want to give you a chance to jump in with any questions before I ramble on. I don't want this to be the Elliot monologue.
I like how you're putting it together, and packaging it, because I think taking that up, and I think I'd love to Rex, anything before he gets into the third one.
Yeah, I just wanted to hit on. I've heard you talking a little bit about what we call the Ansoff Matrix, ANSOFF matrix, but it's that matrix of if you have existing products and new client or existing client and existing product and new product, right? The easiest one to sell is an existing product to an existing client, and then having either a new product or a new client with an existing product or an existing client is the second easiest. And that's what we're asking them to do, with the Azure practice. The hardest is to sell a new product to a new client base, right? And that's definitely the hardest. But we are asking them to step slightly into that adjacent model to look into, the digital transformation work around Azure. So just wanted to bring a little light to that.
Yeah, you're setting a fire in the back of my brain, remembering my business management university with the Matrix and going to innovate and all that stuff. Yeah, but you're right, and I think the preconception is if I start selling this new product, this Azure product, I'm going to need to find new customers because it's not what I sell today. They're not the ones that are interested, and it is a myth. It's something that we can absolutely dispel, and we have the data to prove it as well. So I'd highly recommend checking out the course in the description. It will tell you how to find that data, and you can see firsthand exactly what the opportunity is in your customer base and helps you kind of start that journey. And then the third kind of blocker. This is always something I have to give a pre-warning to before I say it, which is this is something that the global lead for Azure should not ever say. But partners don't really know how to sell Azure, and the biggest
you are an
biggest
academy, so we have a duty to say what we think here. So
I know, and I'll give you a sound bite for you to use for the rest of time here, which is if you want to be successful selling Azure, don't sell Azure. Yeah,
I like that.
It's
like Yoda. I like that. It's very very Jedi kind of a thing. So, but
you're gonna Photoshop me in your backpack with the speech bubble.
I one hand up. But let's unpack that a little bit. Talk a bit more about that, and talk about like maybe some of the do's and don'ts about having those Azure conversations or quote unquote selling Azure.
Yeah, so I think it's just understanding your customer base, like first and foremost, right? I think if we take any SMB business, whether it's a small financial organization, whether they're in healthcare, whether it's like a mechanic garage, right? They don't know what Azure is, and it's not their responsibility to know. So if you come up to them and say, would you like to buy some Azure? They will be very confused. So if you go to market trying to sell Azure, trying to sell the nuts and bolts, you're going to get blank stares, you're going to get nowhere. It's going to be incredibly difficult. And also, you're kind of devaluing your practice because you're selling the component parts, right? So there's kind of two analogies I use for this, right? The first is when we talk about not selling Azure, I assume everyone here has kind of been on like a package holiday or a cruise or something of that nature, right? And I use this example every single time I talk about selling Azure. So, Chris, if I'm going to try and sell you a cruise, right, I'm going to come up to you and say, right, the cruise that we're going to take you on is going to be this large cruise liner. It's the model T515X. It's made of this metal. We're going to use this much fuel. We're going to have this much staff on board. We're going to have this silverware, this cutlery. Do you want to buy it?
Why?
You don't even know enough to answer. Exactly.
What language are you speaking to me right now? Yeah.
But if I tell you, hey, you can come on my cruise, we'll give you unlimited alcohol from start to finish. You can do yoga on the front deck as the sun rises. We've got this much entertainment. We have like a pool facility on board, like all the things that you care about. You're more likely to go buy it.
Yeah. Now I'm interested. Now all of a sudden it's.
Hey, there we go.
What was the first thing you said? Unlimited what? Yeah.
Yoga, right? It was that one? No.
No, right. Yeah, me and unlimited yoga. That so is on brand. You're absolutely right, though. I mean, and that's a key way that conversation. It's not going to go. Understanding what is of importance to them.
Forever, we've been talking to partners that are trying to sell managed services that they need to sell a birthday cake, not flour and sugar
Yes.
and
Yeah.
eggs.
Azure's the easiest one to fall into that trap with, because it's VM X, Y, and Z with this much storage and this much networking and this like encryption. And an SMB customer's gonna look at you like you're talking another language, because you pretty much are. But if I say to an SMB customer, hey, what I can do is I can give you a virtual machine, but what that does is it allows your workers to work remotely and connect into your organization and your data where it is, and it allows them to work where they are without the risk of data leakage, because nothing's physically on the device they use to do work. That's a conversation that makes sense, because the customer's thinking, okay, I'm not having people leave laptops with all my company data on the bus or the train, and they can work whenever they need to. And like all of these things start to resonate, but I'm not saying it's this server this much. And I think the second thing I kind of tease there is it also devalues your offering, right? So one of the kind of things that we talk about is the component cost of Azure, right? That is something that Microsoft controls. Microsoft could choose to increase the prices or decrease prices overnight, and then that then impacts you, and then it then impacts your customers. So one of the things that I try and encourage partners to do is not to sell on component price plus X%. It's sell on business value. What problem are you solving? And then price your product appropriately, because you've got underlying resource cost, you've got your cost of running your business, then you have the value of the solution that you're selling to your customer. But then right at the very top, you've got the customer's willingness to pay. And they enter the conversation right at the very top of that chart, which is, okay, I've got this problem in my business. I'd be willing to pay this much to solve it. And then if you approach that customer and start talking about component costs, of course they're going to say, how much is this thing and this thing and this thing? And all of a sudden you're dragging down their willingness to pay to match those component parts. And actually, if you just solve a business problem, talk to them about what problem you're solving and sell based on value, you're adding in your own margin. And that's one of the big things we hear about the kind of Microsoft ecosystem is margins are so much smaller. But actually, you're kind of doing it to yourself by selling on those component parts. If you build in managed services from the start, you solve business problems, you sell on value, one, it makes sense and you'll sell more. But two, that's where customers are entering the conversation, and you're going to be doing a better service to your own business by selling on that value too. So that's kind of one of those big things we try and dispel on Azure is don't print out the cost calculator and give that to a customer. It makes me sad inside when I see it happen.
Yeah. You die inside a little bit, but
Yeah.
it's a mind shift, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is to really embrace changing your mindset, changing your perception. How do we sell it? How do we talk about it? How do we present it? How do we price it? What's the real value at the end? And I think that's a challenge, but I think it's very doable once you when you think about that, when you present that to me about talking about the type of metal and the silver and the cutlery and this and that,
right?
It totally resonates, and I can apply that to Azure. Rex, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean that's why we built the entire results selling framework, right? Like, talk about the outcomes of saving money, increasing efficiency, or reducing risk, right? Like that's what the entire results selling framework is all about. Is not selling flour and eggs and sugar or what kind of metal the cruise ship is made out of, right? Because as technicians, that's where we naturally want to go. We have to help align it to solving a business problem or a business need. And if Azure is one of the components, don't sell Azure.
Yeah, and I saw it with the partner, and I love the result selling framework on this, because the biggest thing with Azure in terms of selling on value, and then I know I'm kind of out of time on my piece, so I'll keep this brief, I promise. But it benefits you to sell on value because of the healthiness of the revenue coming through your business. But one of the biggest problems that partners have right at the start with Azure is that everybody is selling the same solution, right? And the tagline I kind of give with this is, if you just sell the component parts of Azure, your competition is everybody on the planet with an internet connection. Any single person who has an internet connection can sit at a Starbucks on their laptop, go to pax8.com, sign up as a reseller, sign up as a Microsoft partner, and by the end of the day, be selling the exact same enterprise-grade solution that you are selling to your customers with no difference. So if all you're doing is selling Azure and handing that cost calculator to a customer, your competition is everybody on the planet with an internet connection. So in order to protect your business and make sure that you can't just be compared to anybody with an internet connection, sell on value, right? Sell on the result selling framework. You use these things to protect yourself and add value. And all of a sudden, then your competition is only someone who can add value, add managed services, understands your customer base, which is way smaller than everyone with an internet connection, right? So it just makes sense to do things that way.
That's awesome. Well put. Thank you, Elliot. This is really, really valuable. And I think this is a perfect segue now to move over into Keith Marciano's sales pitch. And I would say, as we do, and as we listen to Keith, think about how this applies to Azure.
When I coached baseball, one of the hardest things to do with the players was to teach them to visualize success. Visualize hitting the ball. Visualize the ball coming your way and you taking the right route and right approach to get it and catching the ball. Visualize winning the game. This was tough to do. After all, they were used to the physical coaching of fielding, hitting, and throwing. In selling IT services, this is true too. We're trying to sell solutions and services. Neither are physical items that the buyer or prospect can feel, touch, or see. Selling cloud services, managed services, a decade ago was very difficult because of this. Today, most businesses have adapted to cloud technology into their business. The small and mid-sized business markets have embraced the thought of having somebody manage their IT services and their network and paying a monthly reoccurring fee. So why do IT service providers still have problems with this? Mostly because we talk about what the cloud does, what our security offerings do, the things that we're best at, right? We get in the weeds technically, which is needed, but we need to first start by understanding the business case for any of the solutions that we offer. So we're going to touch all the bases to help you sell the intangible solutions. 1, establish the need. Ask good questions about their business to determine what challenges are they having, what problems are they having. Ask even better follow-up questions or follow-through questions to get to the root of those problems and how those problems impact their company. 2, determine their requirements. Continue to ask questions around this. What they want the outcomes to be. What are they looking for? What do they visualize good to look like? Will they get buy-in from the executive team and the rest of the company around this solution? How will they evaluate the change internally? 3, articulate your value. What problems do your solutions solve? By solving that problem, what positive outcome, what results will they get? The metrics your clients achieve by you when you implemented this solution for them. 4, prove it. Tell stories. Sitting around the campfire. You need to tell stories on how your solutions solve these problems for your clients, preferably clients in the same industry as them. This will help separate you from your competition, make you more of a subject matter expert, differentiate you in the prospect's mind, and the reason being is that you can defend your solutions because you've done it before. How do you do it? Prove it with case studies, video testimonials, references. So what have we learned? Focus on the impact the problem has on their business and the results they'll achieve by doing business with you. They want to have confidence in somebody, they being the buyer, that solves their problems, helps them grow their business, improves operational efficiencies, reduce their risk, gives them a competitive edge. They want guidance, leadership by somebody who knows their business and their industry, somebody who will make their lives easier and produce results for them. So go out there and not only visualize the win, but win the business. To learn more on this results selling framework on demand in Academy, it's a free course on how to use some of this methodology to visualize, execute, and win business.
Still hear you.
Keith, great job. Thank you very much. I wanted to take a minute. I wanted to bring Chris Kirby, and Elliot Chandler. See how casual we kind of are around here. But Chris Kirby, Elliot Chandler, I wanted to bring them back on here for a moment and just kind of get some some last thoughts. So, Chris, Kirby, is there anything else you'd like to kind of say or share with our audience?
Yeah, I just wanted to reemphasize that, one of the biggest barriers that I see people avoiding the cloud, specifically Azure, is just the unknown. They're not familiar with it, but I just wanted to let you guys know that from, designing a solution to implementing the solution and even supporting your environment after the fact, Pax8 has teams to help you with all of those areas of getting moved into the cloud. And like I mentioned earlier, even Academy, even after the fact, if you need more education on it. So we call you our partners, but we definitely want to be your partner in your cloud journey as well. So reach out to your representative if you have any questions at all, and we are here to help.
Very well put. Thank you, Chris Kirby. Elliot, how about you? Something to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I want to start by reinforcing that the pro services team, Chris and his colleagues, are rock stars. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without a team like them backing me up and doing all the complicated bits. We have an amazing pro services team, an amazing account teams of infrastructure solution consultants and solution engineers across the globe. So if being intimidated is the blocker, we've got rock stars on hand that can help you. But I think coming off the back of today's episode, my recommendation to our partners is just start understanding the opportunity, right? Start with your Cloud Ascent data. We have that link in the description. Understand what's being left on the table, right? Look at your existing customers. Is there an opportunity there? Start really having the conversation is it right for me and my business to start looking at an Azure practice? And then how can Pax8 help, right? We can do deployments for you. We've got a great support team. We have solution consultants that can help you co-sell. So just really start having that process and conversation around what's on the table, what's the opportunity, and how can we start tackling this piece by piece. But just be really focused and just start proactively looking at that. I think the opportunity that's on the table will probably surprise most of our partners.
Very good. Very, very well put. I want to thank you both for being here. I really appreciate your time and you sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and experience. So thank you both. And now let's move on to final thoughts.
Well, they say a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? And a lot of us are on somewhere on that journey of adding Azure, the whole digital transformation into the way we operate our businesses and how we support our end clients. And just I hope everybody's getting the message that Academy is here to help with that learning journey. Proserve is here to help you learn how to get your own infrastructure running, as well as help you with those first actually all of them if you want to, but those forays into bringing Azure solutions into your end client base. So we're here to help you. Chris, what do you think?
I think that there are many compelling reasons that we've heard today and that we know are out there for partners to really examine, exploring Azure practice at whatever level. And it does not have to be something new, and really, I think starting with existing base and use cases and the value there. I think that partners would be surprised. I think, as like our guest said, there's probably a lot more opportunities there than we recognize, and that the path to it may not be as complex or complicated. I'm not saying easy button, but I am saying I think that there is definitely a path to success in kind of expanding into Azure, and adopting that. And I think it is where things are going. We already know that, and the numbers are very compelling. So that would be my final thoughts. So thank you for watching. We appreciate you being here. Be sure to check us out next week when we'll be talking to Keith Marciano about Result Selling Framework. So remember, we're live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain and on demand always. Please don't forget to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. And Rex, would you help please close us out?
As always, every week, go home tonight and think about what you're going to do differently tomorrow to grow and mature your business. Thanks, everyone.
Very good.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.